Joining me today is Nicolas Tollet, a seasoned expert in compliance, currently a partner at Hughes Hubbard and Reed, that also acted as vice president of compliance for one of the world's first company put under monitorship for FCPA-related violations. Nicolas, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to share from my experience with compliance, particularly focusing on how it can lead to substantial financial benefits. Today, I'll illustrate how our proactive compliance measures allowed a company to save approximately 100 million in the context of the deferred prosecution agreements entered into, which underline the financial ramifications of compliance, failures, and successes.
Nicolas, this company signed several deferred prosecution agreements. Can you start by providing us with an overview of what led to the first one?
Absolutely. The first DPA stemmed from serious allegations of bribery and corruption in Africa. The company was implicated in practices that violated both local and international laws, which not only posed significant legal risks, but also threatened its reputation and a long-term viability in the market. Recognizing the severity of the situation, the company entered into a DPA with the US DOJ and the SEC.
What were the key components of that DPA?
The DPA mandated that the company implement a comprehensive compliance program, which included appointing an independent monitor to oversee its compliance efforts for a specified period. This monitorship was critical because it allowed the company to receive unbiased feedback on its compliance practices and ensure it was on the right track. The monitor worked closely with the compliance team, which throughout the process was composed of in-house personnel and the outside counsels to evaluate the policies, training programs, and internal controls.
What did the company learn from that experience?
Through this process, the compliance team, with management, laid the groundwork for a robust commitment to integrity and accountability across the organization. Management learned valuable lessons about the importance of transparency, and we established a culture for the company that prioritized ethical behavior. This early investment in compliance that set the stage for the company future successes, allowing it to address issues head-on and mitigate risks effectively.
Now let's discuss the second DPA signed in the context of Brazil's Lava Jato investigation. How did that agreement relate to the previous efforts the company made following the first one?
The second DPA was a crucial moment for the company, but it's important to note that most of the foundational work was already done prior to this agreement. Following the first DPA, we had significantly enhanced the compliance framework for the company and established effective internal controls. By the time the company faced the challenges related to the Lava Jato investigation, we were already in a strong position due to the proactive measures we had implemented during the monitorship.
What significance did the Lava Jato investigation have for the company?
The Lava Jato investigation was one of the largest corruption investigations in history, exposing deep-rooted issues in Brazil's construction and public sectors. While many companies were caught off guard, our proactive compliance measures allowed the company to respond effectively. Because we had already established a strong compliance culture, we could reinforce the company's internal investigations and present it favorably to the authorities.
Often compliance is viewed as a burden. How do you make the case for compliance as a competitive advantage?
That's a critical point. Often we talk about compliance as a competitive advantage, yet we seldom quantify its financial impact. Effective compliance can save a company millions, or here circa $100 million, and serve as a vital component of a successful business strategy. Many companies view compliance as a cost center, an expense that detracts from the bottom line. However, our experience has shown that robust compliance practices can lead to significant financial benefits. The monitorship became a critical component of the company's compliance strategy. When the independent monitor was appointed, their primary role was to assess the existing compliance measures and provide recommendations for improvement and detection of misconduct, which led the internal compliance team to identify the problems in Brazil before the Lava Jato task force did.
Can you walk us through that process and explain how it led to the detection of misconduct?
Certainly. As part of this process, the compliance team, composed of in-house personnel and the outside counsels working hand in hand, conducted in-depth compliance reviews of the company's operations around the world. These reviews were designed to assess the subsidiaries' adherence to compliance standards and identify any potential areas of risk.
What specific actions did the compliance team take during these compliance reviews that facilitated the identification of potential misconduct?
During the compliance reviews, the compliance team focused on high-risk areas, particularly in regions like Brazil, where the potential for corruption was elevated. We analyzed financial transactions, procurement processes, and third-party relationships to identify any irregularities that could indicate misconduct. This thorough approach allowed them to uncover instances of potential misconduct that warranted further investigation.
Once potential misconduct was identified, what steps did the team take to address it?
Once the team identified potential misconduct in Brazil, they initiated a formal internal investigation. This process involved gathering evidence, interviewing key personnel, and reviewing relevant documentation. The aim was to understand the scope of the issues thoroughly and ensure that the compliance team's findings were based on solid evidence. The investigations revealed several instances of misconduct that required immediate action, and the company adhered to the DOJ's recommendations to investigate, stop the misconduct, remediate the situation, and impose sanctions where necessary. During the relevant period, I was spending 1/3 of my time in the company's operations in Brazil.
Can you elaborate on how the company stopped the misconduct once it was identified?
Stopping the misconduct involved a multifaceted approach. First, the company immediately halted any ongoing questionable activities linked to the identified issues. It also communicated with relevant employees about the seriousness of the situation, reiterating its commitment to compliance and the consequences of unethical behavior. Moreover, the company made changes in leadership and oversight in the affected areas to ensure that such misconduct wouldn't continue. This included reinforcing the compliance team with additional resources and authority to act decisively.
What remediation measures did the company implement following the detection of misconduct?
Remediation was crucial. The compliance team undertook a comprehensive review of the compliance policies and procedures, revising them to better align with best practices and regulatory expectations. This included updating the training programs to ensure all employees understood the compliance standards and their responsibilities. And the company also introduced regular compliance training sessions tailored to specific regions and risks. These sessions were designed to engage employees and foster a culture of ethics and integrity. Importantly, the compliance team ensured that the lessons learned from its investigations were incorporated into the training materials. Besides, the company stopped using commercial agents in Brazil, while in the rest of the world, commercial agents were put through a very in-depth due diligence involving outside counsel, and the HQ compliance leaders met with each of them and reviewed every single payment request with their supporting documentation. In Brazil, high-risk intermediaries, such as logistics, ports agents, customs agents, etc., whatever their size, were put through in-depth due diligence through outside counsel, and the HQ compliance leaders also met with each of them. The company also exercised audit clauses in Brazil, but also in other parts of the world, such as in Venezuela, because it was important that the compliance efforts be in all the operations and not just in Brazil. Another important aspect was the use of outside counsel. They gave the company the expertise and independence that was required to provide the top management and the authorities with appropriate analysis in light of the level of risks. In our legal field, we have limited case law. Instead, we have public settlements that are important to refer to understand the authorities' expectations. In this case, the DPA expressly stated that the company conducted a thorough internal investigation, proactively identifying issues and facts that would likely be of interest to the fraud section and the office. It also stated that the company provided to the fraud section and the office all relevant facts known to it, including information about the individuals involved in the misconduct. Most importantly, the DPA stated that based on the company's remediation and the state of its compliance program, the fraud section and the office determined that an independent compliance monitor is unnecessary.
Were there any sanctions imposed as a result of the misconduct?
Yes, sanctions were imposed on individuals found to have engaged in misconduct. These disciplinary actions that varied based on the severity of the violations and were in line with the company's established compliance policies.
How did these steps prepare the company for the challenges posed by the Lava-Jato investigation?
By the time the Lava-Jato investigation began, we had already established a strong compliance foundation. The company's proactive measures meant that we were not only prepared to respond to inquiries, but also had a clear understanding of its internal processes and the changes the company had implemented. This readiness allowed us to reinforce the internal investigations and present a comprehensive compliance program to the authorities. When faced with scrutiny, the company could demonstrate its commitment to ethical practices, which ultimately helped it achieve a favorable outcome in its dealings with regulators.
Nicolas, can you outline the financial benefits the company experienced as a result of the compliance actions taken, especially in light of the second DPA?
Certainly, there are 4 key financial benefits that stand out. First, the company was able to negotiate a deferred prosecution agreement despite being a recidivist. This is often challenging for companies with prior misconduct, but it demonstrated to regulators the company's commitment to rectifying past issues and implementing effective compliance measures.
That's a significant achievement. What's the second benefit?
The second benefit was that by proactively stopping corrupt practices, we significantly limited the amount of misconduct within the organization. The actions taken after the first DPA almost certainly reduced the total amounts of bribes paid and the number of projects won through corruption when the Brazilian problem emerged. As part of our investigations, we observed the stark difference between the company's situation and that of other companies, which did not halt their corrupt practices until the Lava-Jato investigation began. These companies faced severe scrutiny and much higher exposure as a result.
What about the costs associated with oversight? Did the company incur any?
No, thanks to its demonstrated compliance efforts, the company avoided the costs associated with a monitorship, which can run into millions of dollars. The second DPA acknowledged that the company had already taken significant steps to enhance its compliance program, which was a critical factor in avoiding this additional financial burden.
That sounds like a huge saving. What's the fourth benefit?
The fourth benefit was a 25% reduction in the fine faced, which corresponded to a savings of $75 million. Additionally, no employees were prosecuted because of the demonstrated compliance efforts.
How would you summarize these benefits?
In summary, these benefits illustrate how compliance had become an efficient insurance policy for the company. By investing in and prioritizing compliance, the company safeguarded itself against significant legal and financial repercussions. It allowed the company to mitigate risks and create a sustainable path forward, enhancing its operational integrity and financial stability.
Now let's compare that case with the Walmart FCPA case. What similarities and differences do you see?
There are some critical points of comparison. Walmart faced a substantial fallout from its FCPA violations, resulting in over $1 billion in total costs. This includes 500 million investigations, 500 million in compliance remediation, plus the $282 million settlement. Their lengthy and costly investigations highlight the dangers of neglecting compliance until issues become public. In contrast, the proactive compliance measures in my example allowed the company to address potential misconduct before it escalated. As a result, the company avoided the immense legal fees and fines that Walmart faced. While Walmart's struggles with compliance stemmed from a delayed response to red flags, the company I worked with was able to demonstrate a commitment to compliance early on, which was recognized by regulators during our DPA negotiations.
That's a powerful comparison. What can companies learn from the differences in these cases?
The key takeaway is that early investment in compliance can save companies significant financial resources in the long run. Being proactive rather than reactive allows organizations to avoid severe penalties, maintain operational integrity, and protect their reputation.
The company also entered a third settlement more recently in Europe. Can you give us some context?
This is particularly relevant when considering the company's overall compliance efforts. During the company's monitorship and the compliance reviews we conducted, we identified misconduct in both Brazil and Africa during the years 2000. The misconduct in Brazil was handled by the US and Brazilian authorities, while the African misconduct was addressed by the local authorities in Europe. In both cases, the respective authorities recognized the company's compliance efforts, which led to settlements, financial benefits, and the absence of a monitorship.
So when we talk about the savings of approximately $100 million, that's only related to the Brazilian case?
Exactly. The $100 million figure specifically pertains to the compliance actions in Brazil. However, it's important to note that this number only reflects one part of the story. If we also consider the proactive measures taken regarding the misconduct identified in Africa, the total savings could be significantly higher. This emphasizes the comprehensive financial impact of the compliance initiatives, demonstrating that the company's commitment to compliance not only safeguarded its interests in Brazil, but also provided substantial benefits in its African operations. Ultimately, the company's compliance efforts have proven to be a critical investment, yielding significant financial rewards across all affected regions.